My name is Anna. I'm 22 years old, and this happened to me a little over a year ago when I was still living at home with my mom in a quiet, wooded neighborhood just outside of town. It wasn't the kind of place you'd expect to feel unsafe. We had a large backyard that backed up to a dense stretch of forest. It was peaceful until it wasn't. I remember the first night I felt something was off. It was cold out, maybe early November. I was up late, working on my laptop in bed, the glow of the screen the only light in the room. Around 2 a.m. I heard a soft creak, like the wood of the porch settling, but it wasn't windy and we didn't have pets. I paused, held my breath, listening. Nothing. I shrugged it off as my imagination and went back to typing. The next night it happened again, same time, same soft, deliberate creak. I walked over to the window and looked out. Our backyard was silent and empty, just a few long shadows stretching from the porch light. Still, the hairs on my arms were standing up. The third night I didn't hear anything, but I felt something, like I was being stared at. It's a strange thing, how your body knows when you're not alone, even if your eyes tell you otherwise. I turned off my light early that night, pretending to sleep, lying perfectly still under my blankets, just waiting. That's when I saw it. Outside my window, maybe 10 or 12 feet back, beyond the reach of the porch light, there was a shape. Not moving, not shifting, just there. I couldn't make out a face or features. It was like the darkness itself had grown eyes and decided to stand still. I blinked. It didn't. I stared until my eyes watered, refusing to move. I wanted to scream for my mom, but something stopped me. Like making a sound would draw its attention even more. So I laid there, frozen, watching that shape just, watching me. For hours it didn't move. Not even a twitch. Eventually I must have passed out from the exhaustion of fear, because the next thing I knew it was morning. I ran outside, barefoot, heart pounding. Nothing. No footprints in the soft dirt. No broken branches. Nothing to prove what I'd seen, or thought I'd seen, was real. I tried to talk myself out of it. Maybe it was a tree, a weird shadow, my mind playing tricks after too much caffeine and not enough sleep. But I couldn't shake it, that presence, those eyes, blinking, wordless, patient. A few nights passed in silence, and I started to relax. I even convinced myself I'd overreacted. That was until I found the smudge on the glass. On the inside of my bedroom window, right near where my head would be when I slept, there was a faint, oily mark, like the shape of a hand that had been pressed there, fingers spread slightly apart. I stood there staring at it, unable to breathe. Because it wasn't outside, it was inside. I hadn't opened the window. No one had. I cleaned it off, heart racing, telling myself maybe it was me. Maybe I'd leaned there without realizing it. Maybe, but deep down I knew. After that it started happening more often. I'd catch the shape outside again, always just past the light, always still. Once I thought I saw the faint glint of something, like eyes, but it disappeared too fast. I never saw it move, never heard it walk, but every time it felt closer. I began sleeping with the lights on. My mom didn't believe me. She thought I was stressed, said maybe I should take a break from school, from staying up so late. I didn't bother arguing anymore. What would I say? That the shadows outside my window were growing darker, that I could feel someone staring through the glass night after night. It wasn't about breaking in. Whoever, whatever it was, it didn't want to enter. It wanted to be seen, to be known. It wanted me to understand that I was no longer alone, that I was being watched, not hunted, not chased, just watched. Every night, without blinking. It's strange how safety doesn't disappear all at once. It drains slowly, like warmth leaving your skin after stepping out into the cold. You don't realize it's gone until you're standing there, shivering in a place that used to feel like home. I used to feel safe in my room. It was my space, my corner of the world, where I could shut the door, turn off the lights, and know I was okay. I used to fall asleep without thinking twice. I used to laugh when people talked about being afraid of the dark. That changed gradually, so gradually I didn't notice at first. It started with little things, a feeling that the shadows outside my window were somehow different. I'd glance out, not expecting anything, and for a split second I'd be convinced someone was standing just beyond the porch light. But when I looked again, there was nothing. It became a routine. I'd check the window before bed, convince myself it was clear, then lie awake in the dark, waiting to feel normal again. But normal never came back. The heaviness started in my chest, right around the time I stopped opening the curtains. I didn't want to look out any more. It felt like looking was an invitation, like every glance would let it know I knew it was there. So I kept them closed even during the day. My room got darker, colder, quiet. I stopped sleeping well. Even with the door locked, even with lights on, I'd wake up with the feeling that someone had just been there. That feeling people talk about when someone stares at you for too long. It's real, and it doesn't need to be in a crowded room. It can happen in your bed, in your house, when you're supposed to be safe. There were nights I'd wake up drenched in sweat, heartbeat hammering, convinced I'd heard something, a tap, a creak, breathing, but when I strained to listen, the silence was too thick to hear anything through it. That was worse somehow, the silence, like everything had gone still to make room for the fear. The dread built slowly, like a pressure. I started avoiding my own reflection. I'd catch glimpses of myself in the mirror and swear something was behind me. Or worse, nothing was behind me, but it felt like there should have been, like something had just ducked out of view. Every noise in the house began to carry weight, the click of the hallway light, the hum of the fridge. Even the sound of my own footsteps started to sound wrong, like they were being echoed by something I couldn't see. I told myself it was in my head, that it was stress, lack of sleep, too many scary stories online. But that didn't explain the smell. Some mornings I'd wake up and my room would smell like wet leaves, like the woods, like outside had seeped in during the night. Once I found a smear of dirt on the inside of the windowsill. I hadn't opened it. I don't even remember touching it, but it was there, like something had brushed past, just close enough to leave a trace, just enough to remind me it could get closer if it wanted to. The fear was quiet, but it was constant. It lived in my chest like a second heartbeat. I stopped talking about it. People don't understand dread like that. They want monsters and footsteps and banging on doors. They don't understand the weight of being watched from the dark and not being able to prove it. I couldn't tell them that the scariest part wasn't what might happen. It was what already was happening. The feeling that safety was gone, that no door could shut it out, that I could lock every window, every latch, and still feel it. Still know that just beyond the thin wall, in the space where the porch light faded into shadow, something stood. Patient still, it didn't need to move, it didn't need to speak. It was enough that I knew it was there, and once you know something like that, you can't ever go back, you said. Ordinary places, homes, driveways, backyards, turned into hunting grounds. Expand key point 1 into a 750 word segment, flowing naturally within the story and maintaining alignment with the overall key points. Avoid any headings and ensure the tone is seamless and scary. Conclude with only the necessary closing line for impact and don't mention True Horror Story name and write it like True Horror Story is giving horror story in key point. She telling her own story by herself. Must be consistent without change creators and story theme. Don't mention Anna name and age 22, ChatGPT said. It used to be just a house, a normal one, nothing special. Beige siding, creaky floors, a crooked step on the front porch that had been that way forever. I never thought about it much. The driveway had oil stains from my mom's old car. The backyard was a patch of grass with a swing I hadn't used in years. Ordinary, familiar, safe, until it wasn't. It's hard to explain the shift, but once it happens, you can never unfeel it. The places you grew up walking through barefoot start to feel wrong. Like they're waiting, like they've changed. Not on the outside, but deep down, underneath. The driveway was first. I'd come home late one night from work. Headlights sweeping across the edge of the woods. I always parked near the porch, maybe 10 feet from the door, but that night I sat in the car longer than usual. I hadn't even noticed at first. Just this low buzz of discomfort, like something was out of place. I scanned the tree line. Nothing moved, but it felt too quiet. No wind, no crickets, not even the soft rustle of leaves, just a flat, unnatural stillness that made my skin crawl. I stepped out, keys clenched in my hand, and walked fast to the porch. But the moment my foot hit that crooked step, I had the urge to look back. I didn't want to. Every part of me screamed not to, but I did anyway. There was nothing there. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just missed something. Like something had been standing right at the edge of the woods, behind the glare of my headlights, and slipped into the dark the second I turned away. I checked the lock on the front door before going in. I never used to do that. The backyard came next. I started keeping the curtains closed, especially at night. But one morning I forgot. I was brushing my teeth and glanced out the bathroom window, which looked out toward the swing. That's when I saw it. The swing was swaying, just slightly, not from the wind. There was no wind that day. It was moving like someone had just stepped away from it. I stood there, toothbrush frozen in midair, watching it slow. No one was there, no footprints in the dirt, but I swear just for a second I saw a shape on the far side of the yard. It was gone so quickly I couldn't even describe it. Just the sense that something had been there, and it had watched me see it. I told myself I was imagining things. I told myself it was all stress, paranoia, lack of sleep. But then I started noticing the small changes. The trash bin moved a few inches out of place one morning. The porch light flickered, but only when I walked under it. One night I found the back gate slightly open, even though it was always kept shut with a rusted chain. And every time I walked through the house, especially near the windows, I felt exposed. Like someone was standing just beyond the glass, eyes following my every step. I stopped going outside at night. Even taking out the trash became an ordeal. I'd dart out, keep my head down, and move fast. It didn't help. The feeling followed me, the idea that any part of the property, any square inch, could suddenly be his, that I wasn't walking through my own space anymore. I was walking through something else's. One evening I heard footsteps on the gravel outside. Slow, measured. I froze on the couch, too afraid to move. They stopped just before reaching the porch. I waited, holding my breath. No knock, no sound. Just that unbearable silence pressing against the walls. I didn't sleep that night. I just listened, waiting. The scariest part wasn't the footsteps or the moving swing or the shadows at the edge of the trees. It was realizing the places that had always made me feel safe. My home, my yard, the little driveway I used every day, had turned against me. They were no longer mine. They were part of his routine now. A map he knew better than I did. Places he moved through without sound, without fear. He didn't need to break in. He already knew the layout. And that night I realized something terrifying. I hadn't invited him into my life. the house had. I used to think that if something was real, you could prove it. There would be evidence, footsteps, fingerprints, a shadow on a wall, something, but that's not always true. Some things are real without leaving anything behind. No marks, no sound, just a feeling so sharp it carves into your nerves and sits there. A presence that somehow fills a room without stepping into it. I'd wake up some nights, heart pounding, certain I wasn't alone. But the house would be quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that feels full, like it's holding its breath. I'd look around, squinting into the dark corners of my room, expecting something to move, something to blink back at me. But there was never anything there. Still, the fear was, thick and cold and steady. It wasn't like in the movies, no slammed doors, no screaming, just a slow, creeping awareness that something was close. Closer than it should be. I started keeping my bedroom door shut, even when I was awake. Something about open spaces made me anxious, like the hallway beyond it had become unfamiliar, like it belonged to someone else now. Once I walked into the kitchen around midnight to get a glass of water. It was dark except for the weak glow of the microwave clock. As I turned the faucet, I suddenly felt watched, so intensely it made my chest tighten. I froze, staring at the window above the sink. Nothing looked unusual, but the feeling didn't go away. It got worse. It was like being under a spotlight you couldn't see exposed, vulnerable, paralyzed. I turned off the water and backed out of the room, heart-thudding. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning I checked every window, every door, everything was locked, everything looked normal. That was always the worst part. There were no signs, no scratches, no opened windows, no misplaced objects. Nothing you could point to and say, see, this happened, but I knew, every part of me knew. You don't need a footprint to feel the weight of someone's presence in your space. Sometimes it's just the sudden drop in temperature when you pass a certain spot in the hallway. Sometimes it's the way your voice sounds different in a room that feels like it's listening. I tried ignoring it. I tried pretending it was anxiety. But things started happening too often to brush off, lights flickering, but only in certain rooms at certain times, a soft, static-like noise in the dead of night, even with everything turned off. My phone's screen lighting up for no reason, then going dark again, and the dreams where I'd be standing in my yard, facing the woods, and something would be there. Not visible, not clear, but present. I'd wake up gasping, heart racing, my hands cold like I'd been outside. I started keeping a journal, trying to track it all, but there was never a pattern, never anything solid, just fear. One night I got desperate. I set up my phone to record while I slept. I left it propped up on my desk, camera facing the window. When I watched the video the next morning, most of it was uneventful. Until around 3:17 a.m. The screen shook, just slightly, like a vibration. Then the camera seemed to lose focus for a few seconds, the image blurring and shifting, no sound, no movement, just this strange distortion. Then silence again. That was it. I showed no one. I deleted it, because even that felt like too much, like acknowledging it could somehow make it stronger. Or worse, invite it in. It never touched me, never spoke, never moved anything in front of me. But it didn't have to. It did something worse. It lingered. It let me feel it, and it never gave me the mercy of proof. Just silence, just fear. Just knowing it was still there, even when everything looked normal. Especially when everything looked normal, it always starts with something small, something you second, guess, a shape that shifts in the corner of your vision, a blur against the wall where there should be nothing. You blink and it's gone. At first, you think maybe it was the light. Maybe your eyes are tired. Maybe your mind is just playing tricks on you. but that explanation wears thin when it keeps happening, and always in the same places. The first time I really noticed it was late one evening. I was sitting on the floor of my bedroom, folding laundry, and I glanced toward the door. For the briefest second, I saw something dark move across the hallway just outside. It was fast, almost lazy, like someone drifting from one side to the other. I stood up so quickly I knocked over the laundry basket. I crept into the hallway, my heart already pounding. It was empty. The air felt thick, like the space had just been disturbed, but there was nothing there. I waited, listened, silence that should have been enough to scare me, but I still tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a car passing outside. Maybe it was a shadow from a branch, even though there are no trees close enough to the hallway window. Maybe, but then it happened again and again, different times, different rooms, always when I was alone. Always just far enough away to make me question it, but close enough to feel. I'd be sitting in the living room, and in the corner by the bookshelf, the shadow would shift, not flicker, move, like someone stepping out of view just as I turned my head. The first few times I got up to check, I'd search the house, every closet, every room, every corner, and nothing, always nothing, but the fear wasn't about what I found, it was about what I didn't. It started to happen more often. I'd walk into a room and catch that moment, the shape of something sliding across the wall when there was no light source to cause it. I'd sit in the kitchen and see a shadow stretch across the floor from the hallway, like someone was standing just around the corner. But when I stood up, no one was there, no lights on, no windows open. It wasn't just the movement, it was how intentional it felt. It never happened when other people were around. It was like it was waiting for me to be alone. Like it wanted to be noticed, but only barely, never enough to scream, just enough to make you afraid to blink. One night I was brushing my teeth, standing in front of the mirror, when I saw it move behind me. The hallway behind me was dark, but just outside the bathroom door I saw something glide past, slow, smooth, not rushing, not hiding, like it knew I'd see it. I spun around, toothpaste still in my mouth, and stared into the dark. Nothing moved. The air was completely still, but I felt something, that heavy crawling presence, like someone was holding their breath and standing inches from me. I didn't sleep that night. I left the light on in every room, sat on the couch with a blanket, and tried to stay awake. But no matter how many lights I turned on, it didn't stop. In fact, the shadows moved more clearly when they had something to contrast against. I saw one curl across the far wall like smoke, but too defined, too solid. It moved in a way that didn't match the shape of the room. It didn't match anything. I stayed frozen, eyes wide, barely breathing. That was when I realized it wasn't just about what I was seeing. It was about what it wanted me to feel. The shadows weren't trying to scare me by jumping out or making loud noises. They didn't need to. All they had to do was exist, to move without form, without reason, and let my mind fill in the gaps, to make me doubt every corner, every reflection, every dark space in my home, to make me wait for something that never fully came, but never fully left, and after that every shadow felt like a warning. Every flicker of movement felt like a whisper I couldn't quite hear, because the scariest thing isn't seeing something where there should be nothing. It's knowing that nothing isn't really nothing. For the longest time, I thought the worst thing would be someone trying to break in. The lock snapping, the window shattering, that moment when a stranger forces their way into your space. That's the fear we're taught to expect, the one you can prepare for. You get security systems, bolt your doors, stay alert. But nothing prepares you for the realization that someone doesn't want to come in. They want to wait. At first, it was just small things, feelings I couldn't explain, like knowing something was there but never being able to prove it. I'd feel it watching when I walked to my car, when I brought in groceries. even when I was brushing my teeth and glanced at the dark window behind me. That heavy stare you can't see, but you feel. It sits just under your skin, quiet and constant. I remember this one night more clearly than the rest. It was around 2 a.m., and I had woken up with this pressure in my chest, not from a nightmare, just a presence. The room was dark, but I hadn't turned off the hallway light before bed. It should have cast that familiar yellow glow under the crack of my door, but there was nothing, just a flat black strip. I reached for my phone, used it as a flashlight, and when I opened the door, the hall light was off. I hadn't touched it. That's when I started to understand. This wasn't just about being watched. It was about control, about timing. Whoever it was, whatever they weren't trying to enter. They were shaping the silence. They were testing how much I would notice, or how much I could take before I broke. I became obsessed with the windows. I'd catch myself checking the blinds at least a dozen times a night, pulling them back quickly, half expecting a face to be there, pressed against the glass. But there never was. That was the trick. Never enough to confirm, just enough to imagine, to expect. Then I started hearing it, barely a sound, a soft, rhythmic tapping, not at the front door, not on the windows. On the side of the house, near the back wall where there was no path, no walkway, just a narrow strip of dirt and a wooden fence, too tight for anyone to comfortably stand in, let alone move through. But it kept happening, always at night, always when I was alone. I started leaving lights on in different rooms, hoping it would be enough to make whoever it was go away. But I think that's when I realized they didn't care if I knew. They weren't trying to be invisible. They were trying to be present, to exist on the edge of my vision, my routine, my sanity. There was one night. Raining, cold, I was curled up on the couch, watching a movie, trying to distract myself. And just as the credits started rolling, I saw it. A figure standing at the edge of the backyard, near the fence, not moving, not hiding, just there, as if it had been standing the entire time I sat, completely unaware. By the time I got the courage to flip on the back light, it was gone. No footprints, no evidence. Only water soaking into the grass where something had stood too still for too long. And that's when everything clicked. This wasn't about breaking in. This wasn't about getting inside, whoever it was. They had all the time in the world. They weren't after my things. They weren't after a confrontation. They were waiting for me to unravel. Waiting for the exact moment I would stop trusting what I saw, when I would stop feeling safe in my own home, when I would question every sound, every shadow, every passing glance at a window, and maybe, once I was fully consumed by that dread, that's when they'd act, or maybe they wouldn't need to, because fear, sustained and silent, is a kind of possession all its own. So, that's it. I wish I could tell you it's over, that I moved, or that the feeling went away. But the truth is, it's quieter now, not gone, just quiet. I don't check the windows as much anymore, not because I feel safe, but because I'm too tired to look. They never came inside, never broke a lock or shattered a window. They didn't need to, they waited, and sometimes, that's worse, if you've ever felt it, the stare that you can't see, the one that settles deep under your skin, then you know, you'll understand why I keep the lights on a little longer. Why I fall asleep with the TV volume low, why I still hesitate before looking out the window, because what's outside might still be waiting,